Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And summarizing everything that took place today, that took place during the previous 12 hours, we can make a conclusion that the 47th President of the United States of America declared the trade war to the rest of the world. Not to the rest of the world, there are several countries the United States of America didn't declare anything. We're talking about the Russian Federation, for example, the Republic of Belarus, but these are just details. Now let's discuss everything in details. Trump said trillions and trillions of dollars in tariff revenue would go towards lowering Americans' taxes and paying down the national debt. In a few minutes, I will sign a historic order imposing reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Simple. It couldn't be simpler. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. This is our declaration of economic independence. For years, hard-working Americans have been forced to sit on the sidelines while other countries grew rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. So this is the most important statement of the President of the United States of America. The US is introducing a 20% tariff on goods from the European Union. Trump shows what tariffs countries have for the US and what the US has for these countries. So this is the table in details. As of today, Europe has become 20% poorer. Not just Europe, many more countries. China will be charged for 34%. For example, Japan will be charged for 24% tariffs, South Korea for 25%, Switzerland for 31%, and many other countries. Once again, the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus will face no charges from the United States of America. And the main problem that the United States of America is currently facing is problems with the budget. For example, today US Senate budget calls for 5 trillion increase in US debt ceiling. The significant number of money, and all this money the United States of America need to take from somewhere. Another important thing that President Trump invokes National Emergency Act to address unacceptable trade imbalances, citing threats to US economic sovereignty. Fact sheet: President Donald Trump declares national emergency to increase our competitive edge, protect our sovereignty, and strengthen our national and economic security. We can say that yes, this is the beginning of the trade war between the United States of America and the rest of the world, but if you ask my opinion, I believe that there are completely different reasons why the United States of America, why the 47th President of the United States of America did that. Now let's discuss this in details. According to our information, according to my opinion, the United States of America is going to face probably the biggest and the most expensive war since the 20th century. And this war is going to take place between the United States of America and its allies, and Iran and its allies. So we have a lot of statements regarding the situation. Let's discuss them in details. War with Iran almost inevitable unless nuclear deal is concluded soon. French Foreign Minister. Another important statement: Iran will be finished by September if it doesn't agree to nuclear deal. Trump. The US is moving bombers and an additional carrier task force to the Middle East. The US warns that Iran has less and less time to agree to the nuclear deal and begin dismantling its nuclear program. The United States and its partners remain committed to regional security and stand ready to respond to anyone seeking to expand or escalate conflict in the region, said Pentagon Chief Spokesman Seal Parnell. The French Foreign Minister also spoke on this topic, starting that war with Iran is almost inevitable if a nuclear deal is not concluded in the near future. Once again, the possible war between the United States of America and Iran is going to be the most expensive war since the beginning of the 20th century. And of course, the United States of America needs to have and needs to have a lots of money for this, and the only way how to get this money is to force the rest of the world to pay for this war. Basically, the tariffs that the United States of America already charged the rest of the world is the money, is the finance that the states are going to use to fight with Iran. So this is our conclusion. We think that this is exactly like this. So basically, Trump is trying to fight with Iran for the money of the rest of the world, for the money from the European Union, from China, from Middle East, from every single country of the world. There are just several exceptions. We're talking about the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus. So this is the situation, and we see that due to the fact that the United States of America have already charged all these countries, we see that the United States of America have already found trillions and trillions of dollars for these purposes. Furthermore, we continue receiving updates that the United States of America continue concentration of their forces in the vicinity of Iran. Few more, let's say, air carriers is coming to this area. The attack fist is very powerful. So, of course, let's wait and see what is going to be next. Now, let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. During the previous 12 hours, we got a lot of very important updates from this territory. The Russians managed to improve their positions along the entire line of combat contact. During the previous night, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the city of Kryvyi Rog with a significant number of drones and Iskander missiles. In this video, we can see the consequences of another Russian attack. Something big was destroyed, and we see energy facilities in the vicinity of this strike. So maybe the Russians attacked the object of the energy facilities of the armed forces of Ukraine and Ukraine itself. Another important thing is that the Russians continue bombing and attacking the city of Kharkiv as well. In this video, we can see several explosions that took place on the territory of the city. As for now, we don't know for sure what exactly the Russians were attacking. The Russians are saying that they attacked and destroyed the military objects and the military facilities. When talking about the situation on the ground, first let's discuss very heavy clashes in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Kamenskaya. Today, several mappers, including neutral mappers, adjusted their maps in the Russian favor, and according to them, by the morning of the 3rd of April of 2025, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Lapkova. This information was also confirmed by different pro-Russian resources. When talking about the pro-Ukrainian sources, they still confirm that the Russians just managed to secure the village of Petykhatki, and that both the settlements of Lapkova and the settlements of Stepova are in the gray zone or are in contested area. So according to pro-Ukrainian sources, there are still resistance from the Ukrainian side on the territory of Lapkova and on the territory of Stepova. When talking about the geolocations, both villages were captured by the Russians. For example, this is the video that we got yesterday from the settlement of Lapkova, and here we can see how 3 Russian soldiers captured several Ukrainian soldiers, and in this moment we can see how the Ukrainians were leaving the basement. So this episode took place exactly in this area, and based on this video we have adjusted the central and the southern part of the settlement and the complete Russian control. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. Today we got lots of updates from this territory, and the most important is that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Vesele. This information was confirmed by different sources, and there was one video published by the Russian sources. In this video we can see how the clashes and how the assault itself of the village of Vesele took place. Here we can see the moment when the Russians were bombing and attacking. Basically this is something like artillery preparation. Then the Russians sent drones to clear the territory, and then the Russians sent infantry. When talking about this video, we don't see any moments, any videos with the Russian flags or with the Russian soldiers on the territory of the village, so we don't know for sure whether the Russians captured the settlement or not. The only thing we have is the report from very reliable source. Anyway, based on this video we have adjusted the map. We have colored the territory of Vesele as a contested area, but we believe that today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm this information. Furthermore, we have just one geolocation that we haven't managed to add to map. We will add this map video during the day, how Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russians in the vicinity of this bridge, which confirms Russian control at least over the southeastern part of this pocket. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Bogatyr direction and Novopavlovka direction. Today we got very important, let's say, map update from pro-Ukrainian sources, and according to them, the Russians managed to improve their positions to the north of the settlement of Ulakli and in the central part of the village of Andreevka. As you can see, the Ukrainians reported that there are still a lot of pockets of resistance from the Ukrainian side, that the Russians still don't have, let's say, strong control over the settlement of Andreevka and the settlement of Constantinople, and basically the south and the central part and the southwestern part of Constantinople and Andreevka are the territories where still clashes and the territories covered with the fog of war. So according to most of the mappers, according to most of the sources, all these three villages were captured by the Russians a long time ago, and the only source who can't accept this is pro-Ukrainian sources. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians continued their offensive operation in assault of the village of Bogdanovka. Today we got lots of reports, lots of statements made by different sources, by neutral mappers, by pro-Russian resources, that the Russians continue offensive and that the Russians currently control around 50 or 60% of the settlement, and most likely by the end of the 4th of April the entire village would be captured and the Russians will begin offensive towards the village of Troitska from the southeast and from the east. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation to the south of the city of Pokrovsk. We have lots of very interesting updates, and probably the most important one is coming from this salient. We've been talking a lot about this territory for the previous several weeks, and today we got additional report from neutral mappers, and according to them, the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours carried out another counter-offensive operation that allowed the Ukrainians to improve their positions, and basically according to neutral mappers, the Russians were forced to fall back from the village of Salona completely towards more reliable positions in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Vovkova. This is a very big problem for the Russians, because if this information is correct, if the Ukrainians are able to take Salon under complete control and to dig in deeper, this is going to be a complete disaster for the armored force of Ukraine, because basically this is going to be the beginning of the end of the salient between the villages of Kotlina, Udachная, Uspenovka and Peshchana. So this is going to be the beginning of complete collapse of Russian defense in this area, and if Ukrainians continue their offensive, or if Ukrainians begin their offensive operation in the direction of Peshchane, most likely the Russians by the end of this week will be forced to fall back from this territory to the settlements of Novotroitska and Shevchenka, and the Russians will try to hold their positions and to hold their defense along this red line. The Ukrainians will be able to restore communication between the city of Pokrovsk and the mainland, which will obviously improve the Ukrainian positions on the territory of the city of Konstantinovka, where the major battle is going to take place in the very near future. Now let's move to the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 24 hours, as you can see, we have a lot of icons from this territory. We have some changes on the ground, and let's start from them. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked the Ukrainian positions on the territory of this stronghold, and as a result of Russian offensive operation, the stronghold was completely captured and secured by the Russians. The Ukrainians were forced to fall back from this territory in the northwestern direction towards the settlements of Gvatovka and towards the settlement of Stara Mikolaevka. According to information we have, the Ukrainians are trying to concentrate their forces exactly in this area. The Ukrainians are trying to regroup themselves and to prepare their units and forces before a major battle for this territory. The Russians, as you can see, established complete FPV drone control over this territory during the previous night. As you can see, we received lots of geolocations and lots of videos how the Russians were hunting, attacking and destroying the Ukrainian units in this area, trying to establish complete FPV drone control to destroy as many as possible Ukrainian, let's say, units, soldiers, equipments, and so on before the beginning of the full-scale offensive. So we see that the clashes in this area are intensifying, and most likely the Russians are about to begin a very powerful offensive in the direction of this agglomeration. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Ukrainians abandoned and quit the Zabalka micro district. This information was reported by pro-Russian resources, and this information was confirmed by neutral mappers. I'll remind you that in 2025, the Ukrainians carried out very successful counter-offensive operation that allowed the Ukrainians to enter Zabalka micro district and to establish complete control over the western part of this block. But then the Russians regrouped, they began counterattacks, and first the Russians secured the northern part of the city of Tariffs, the northwestern part, and now the Russians were about to begin counterattacks in the Zabalka micro district, but the Ukrainians decided to fall back before the Russian offensive operation that allowed the Ukrainians to save their soldiers. Now the Russians are bombing and attacking the settlement of Shevchenka. We believe that in the very near future the Russians will begin offensive operation along the river of Krivoy Tarets with the purpose to get as close as possible to the Kliban-Bytska water reservoir and to cut supply lines between this water reservoir and the city of Tarets that Ukrainians currently can use to support their forces in this pocket. So we see that the battle for this pocket is coming to the decisive phase, and the next 2-3 weeks the main updates, the main adjustments of map are going to come exactly from this territory. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Chasov Yar, where the Russians, after they managed to repel every single Ukrainian attack, I'll remind you that during the previous 4-5 days, Ukrainians carried out lots of counterattacks in this area with the purpose to restore control over the main supply lines, with the purpose to unblock the Ukrainian contingent on the territory of the central Chasov Yar. But those attacks were repelled by the Russians. Maybe the Ukrainians managed to establish a temporary corridor for evacuation. And in this video, for example, we can see how a vehicle entered the central part for evacuation purposes, but this vehicle was discovered and destroyed by the Russian artillery and Russian FPV drones. So we see that despite the fact that Ukrainians made lots of attempts to unblock Ukrainian units in this area, they haven't managed to complete this. Furthermore, the Russians continue offensive operation and they managed to tighten the noose around Ukrainian positions in the central part a bit more. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the northern direction. According to information we have, the Ukrainians are currently regrouping in the area of Demidovka and the area Popovka. The Russian sources reported that currently the Ukrainians began building new fortifications, new strongholds on the territory of the Russian Federation. So more and more proofs, more and more evidences are telling us that the Ukrainians are not planning to fall back from this territory. Now they're building trenches, strongholds with the purpose to control this territory for as long as possible. Obviously, the Ukrainians haven't managed to achieve all their goals. They haven't managed to take under complete control even a single settlement. But now, despite, let's say, failure of their first phase of offensive operation, they decided not to fall back. They decided to improve their positions, which means that the clashes are going to be very hard in this area in the very near future. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.